thing that matters is power.
Welcome to Decoding TV's coverage of Euphoria Season 3, Episode 3, The Ballad of Paladin. I'm David Chen here with Patrick Klepek. I do want to let people know in terms of what we'll be covering on Decoding TV in the weeks moving forward. We got a show of the week coverage of Widow's Bay coming on to Apple TV next week. So you can tune into the Decoding TV podcast for that. And there's also going to be a bonus episode about Beef Season 2. So be sure to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast at Decoding TV to get our coverage as soon as it hits. Patrick Klepek, your thoughts on this week's episode of Euphoria Season 3, Episode 3?
A spectacularly entertaining misfire, but one that feels very much in line with the show that we've been watching. Like, I'm shocked that the wedding happened this early in the season, and yet, despite finally getting all of our characters from previous seasons of Euphoria in the same ballroom together, we're just not going to have them talk to each other. I think it's an episode with some real highs. There are some truly spectacular moments. I think some of the stuff with Jules here is interesting. There are parts, and we'll talk about them like more specifically as we get into the swing of the episode. There are parts here like, oh, there are some of my favorite shots and sequences in Euphoria here. Do I think it's necessarily in service of a good story across this season? I'm not sure, but there are moments and character interactions and choices on line reads and such that I had a blast with. So I was very quickly, Euphoria Season 3 is becoming one in which I'm thoroughly entertained. I'm just, as I sort of posited when we started this, this watch of Season 3, I'm just thoroughly disconnecting this from being Season 3 of the show I was watching before, but as its own thing that is almost feels like fan fiction. Season 3 of Euphoria, I'm enjoying many of the storylines. I guess what I'm disappointed by is many of the follow-ups or lack of follow-ups on these characters, overlapping, making good on storylines and character interactions from the past. Almost none of that is happening here, but what is here, I do have to admit, I find entertaining. So kind of weird spot to be with the show in which I'm both disappointed, but I'm not going to pretend like I'm not having a good time as I watch these episodes, because I definitely am. And some of the stuff that goes down in this episode in particular is just wild.
Yeah. I think I actually liked the episode. I think I
liked the episode.
Yeah, I think it was really entertaining. We've complained in the past about how, they need to contrive all these reasons to get these characters together. I was thinking about it, and I realized Succession did something very similar. I don't think you watched that show, but it's a brilliant show. And basically, you have all these billionaires in the show, and so to get them all together, you'd have to concoct some big event. Oh, we're all having this big conference. Mm-hmm. Oh, we're having a big wedding, and that's why everyone's got to be there. Oh, we're having a big meeting of the shareholders or whatever. And so every week there had to be some kind of big event to get people together. And so it's not unreasonable to have stuff like weddings to make sure everyone gets together. I do agree that it doesn't result in nearly as much drama as you would think. I think the show is just not super concerned with these characters' relationships, at least at this point. Maybe it will evolve in the weeks to come. I mean, it's certainly teasing a lot of it. But this continues to be maximalist filmmaking, where the show is taking you to places and depths of the human mind that you had not considered possible. And there's something notable and audacious about that. Is it good? I can't say, but I can say that I was entertained, and that the episode gave me some stuff to think about. So let's talk about what actually went down in Euphoria Season 3, Episode 3. And by the way, if you have any thoughts or comments or questions, do feel free to email us at decodingtv@gmail.com or comment at youtube.com/@decodingtv. We'd love to hear from you. Anyway, in this episode, The Ballad of Paladin, in art school, we learned that Jules' roommate Vivian tells her about being or having a sugar daddy. We see Jules work her way through multiple sugar daddies, including a plastic surgeon named Ellis. She eventually only sees Ellis all the time. And Ellis does some fairly weird, messed up stuff with her. I don't want to kink shame, and I like to be sex positive here on the podcast, but wrapping
getting some serial killer vibes from your kink.
Wrapping her in duct tape or masking, whatever tape it is, to the point where she can barely breathe and she's kind of this preserved statuette deal. Pretty upsetting stuff.
When I blink and I'm not sure if I'm watching Dexter or Euphoria, like I'm a little worried about Jules.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think the show is quickly shaping up to be about what are some of the things it takes to succeed in the American economy and in late stage capitalism, right? And so coincidentally, a lot of the things that happen in the show happen to be about women being sexually degraded. But
just coincidentally, Sam Levinson just keeps writing all these women who get sex. It just keeps happening.
Did it again. Whoops, did it again.
My Sam Levinson LLM just keeps spitting out these degraded women. It's not my choice. It just keeps occurring over and over again.
Not great. Cut to the present. At the Silver Slipper, Rue is now running guns for the Alamo Brown organization, selling weapons that will be making their way towards Mexico. And look, I don't want to spoil the drama too much, which is a new movie that Zendaya is in.
Yeah, please don't. Please tiptoe.
But I'll just say that I got some drama vibes from some of this stuff in this scene. Okay. I'll just leave it. I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to be more specific.
Okay.
But and I think also like putting guns into the mix is there's kind of a lot of these things that I would say are somewhat quintessentially American or about the American West and getting guns into the mix and having Rue merchandise them is along those lines. Where is it going? I'm not sure. She does say that the guns are mostly heading to Mexico. But it's notable that she's not just peddling drugs anymore. She's also gun running. But then we get to the main set piece of the episode, which is Nate and Cassie's wedding. And I have to say, this is a pretty great sequence because it basically gives Cassie the worst wedding of all time. Like one of the worst weddings of all time. Her mom says all these horrifying things to her as she's walking up
incredible
to the altar. Like just amazing, completely oblivious stuff. Then you have this guy, Nassim, maybe. Nate's quote unquote friend and somebody who Nate owes $500,000 to, showing up, and he's really pissed that Nate is throwing a lavish wedding without having paid him back first. Nate and Cassie try to calm him down and also their friends down who have lent Nate and Cassie some money. But then later at Nate and Cassie's house, Nas has Nate brutally beaten and cuts off Nate's small toe. And I thought that entire sequence, the whole sequence of Cassie at the wedding and then getting upset that Nate owes money and losing her composure, and then the scene in the limo, and then like at the house when she's crying in the foreground and Nate's getting the shit beat out of him in the background. It's like pure comedy. It's like Coen Brothers-esque, really funny, like in a way that I think was intentional. Patrick Klepek, any reactions to this subplot or plotline, I guess?
I'm deeply uninterested in what's going on with Nate, but really don't give a shit that he doesn't have money, needs money. But I think Sydney Sweeney eats. Like,
yes.
Totally. Like, just smashes this episode out of the park. I think this episode captures some of the most interesting stuff that Cassie was in Euphoria season 1 and 2. Like, it gives her interesting material that is both like emotional. She's like shockingly good at physical comedy, like, which a lot of that is required here. The sequence where the friend's wife comes over and is like, we gave you our kids' college money, and it's already a meme, but like it's already all over the place, which is,
we invested our kids' college funds. And what does that have to do with me?
A good sign is like, I don't see how that's my problem. Like, it's just,
what does that have to do with me? Right? It's a great performance.
I don't want to be poor. Like, there are just so many incredible line reads here, but also I think it's the best of Cassie as a character. Like, it's the when she is given interesting material to work with as like sort of like the blonde bimbo stereotype that this show plays off of, I think she can do really good work. And I get you're right. That like what I mean by one of my favorite sequences in Euphoria, like as a show, is the one with Nate getting the shit beat out in the background.
Yeah.
The camera is largely fixed and like does not deviate away as this whole stair sequence plays out. She's great. She's funny and interesting, and like the fight that's happening in the background, like you're only getting. It's just wonderful all around. Obviously, a harrowing situation for our characters, but I was really taken aback by her performance in this episode, and was like, I was glad that she got a moment, because I know she's capable of it, and the show just doesn't always give her a platform for it. But I thought it absolutely did.
You can disagree with Sydney Sweeney's politics. You can have feelings on whether or not she's a good influence and what have you. But you have to give her credit when she delivers a really good performance. And I do think that what she does here in this episode of Euphoria was very solid. She was in this movie called The Housemaid with Amanda Seyfried, which was a fairly enjoyable film. It made over $400 million worldwide, I believe. But she was terrible in it. She was barely conscious in the movie. And at that point, I thought, like, I remember her being good in other things. I remember her being good in like Euphoria, and she was good in this TV movie called Reality. And I was like, is she actually still talented? And I think this episode shows that she is. I think it's hard, I think, sometimes for people to acknowledge that, given her public persona and the various controversies that she's gotten herself into, many of them unnecessary. But in this episode, she fully delivers. Also, Patrick, the situation with Nate and Cassie really reminded me of this story recently. I don't know if you're familiar with the story of Brandon and Candace Miller. But this was a story of this influencer couple that had accumulated tens of thousands of followers and posted about their amazing rich life, where they had this big mansion and would have these elaborate celebrations, birthday parties and parties with famous people. And they're kind of just rich socialites. But then one day the husband committed suicide, and then it was discovered that actually the whole thing was a sham, and he had tens and tens of millions of dollars in debt that she was now going to have to deal with. And yeah, I just this story attracted a great deal of attention when it broke. I think it was about a year ago or so. A couple years ago when this story first broke, and this made me think of it because basically I think that there are many stories of couples where half of the couple is faking the level of wealth for the other couple, and this storyline with Nate and Cassie is a very Euphoria way of depicting that dynamic. Typically, by the way, it will not surprise you to learn it's usually the man in the relationship in a heterosexual relationship who has something to hide and is like fabricating their wealth, and like the woman, it doesn't let the woman even know about it. And then when it all blows up, the woman is left to deal, like she is still damaged by the resulting metaphorical explosion. But I do think it does say something about American society that you have these ostentatious displays of wealth that people feel the need to keep up with the Joneses and kind of demonstrate that they are doing extremely well in ways that I just don't think are as prevalent in other places around the world, or certainly not as extreme. But yeah, Patrick, am I giving the show too much credit? Am I reaching too far? Or do you think the show actually has something insightful to say here?
I feel like we need to know more on whether it's insightful. I just still don't really know where this storyline is going. It's another storyline. We're another episode of the show where old Nate doesn't exist anymore.
Like, can you imagine old psychopathic Nate from Euphoria season 1 and 2 getting into $550,000 of debt with some random dude because he's trying to build a housing development? Like, it's like that's just completely unrecognizable character.
Well, and it's part of what I think puts it in stark contrast in this episode in particular is our cast of characters who, have in theory known each other for years, are very close in high school. Many of them do not get any moments one-on-one with each other, despite it being a contrived wedding scenario, which is often, as you said, what writers will do to like find a reason to get people into a room again. You contrive it with a thing like a wedding, and yet there's precious few moments. The ones we do get I think are very good, and one of them is like a Jules Nate conversation, which echoes similar sorts of conversations they have had in the past in Euphoria season 1 and 2. And I thought their conversation dripped with the sort of tension that like, there are two moments that Nate's like slips back into, almost like you feel like you're gonna get elements of, like, there's a moment in the limo with Cassie and Nate in which, like, oh, this would be old Nate, this is where he would have turned into a psychopath, and none of that happens. But you kind of get echoes of it there. When he's with Jules, you get a little bit of the old Nate who stands over somebody else, who borrows like a puff of the cigarette to try and like break the ice while he's being extremely menacing. And none of that stuff happens. But like, if you wanted to do the good guy Nate or like different Nate, the sequence with Jules accomplishes much more of like how a character is getting from A to B than anything we've gotten. The show hasn't even tried with Nate, with Cassie, but at least with the Jules stuff, there's a little bit of, I see how their relationship is evolving and how these two might view each other given their own unique, their own circumstances now in life.
That's fair enough. I mean, I liked the class commentary in the episode with Cassie saying, like as you said, I don't want to be poor, and this idea of this pressure to just be wealthy, but they don't actually have it. So it's not like, like, I don't want to lose this wealth. It's like you don't even have the wealth. So it's like, but there's this overwhelming pressure to have it, to kind of to appear.
Aesthetics, right?
To have the facade of wealth. And then the cost is something very, very ugly, which is Nate losing his little toe. And I just like that dichotomy. I like that it's this idea of, this wealth, this facade is built on cheating people and this horrifying violence that results in that. There was a scene also with Cal and Jules, and they kind of make peace with each other, I guess. Eric Dane plays Cal, Nate's father. I did just want to acknowledge that I thought this Cal stuff in the season is very lovely.
Yeah.
If you don't know what happened with Eric Dane, he recently passed away and struggled with ALS in his final days. And he has talked publicly about how Sam Levinson was very accommodating about his ALS, like how he's like would slur his words because it is a neurological syndrome that makes it difficult to control your muscles. And that Sam Levinson basically wrote it into the show where, he can slur his words because he's been consuming alcohol or he's under the influence. And that's kind of the sense that you get in the show. I have done this podcast. I used to do this podcast with famous character actor Stephen Tobolowsky called The Tobolowsky Files. And one of the main plot lines of that podcast was Stephen talking about how he broke his neck while riding a horse many years ago, and he was very scared that his career was over, like that no one would call him again and he wouldn't be in anything. But it turns out that literally he had some of the biggest, most recognizable roles of his career after that event. He was in Silicon Valley and One Day at a Time and all these other things. And he talked about getting the first role after his neck was broken and how important that was to him, right? And how it's like when you experience some kind of bodily tragedy or dysfunction, being able to work again, do some work and earn some money is like a really meaningful experience. So anyway, I thought about that when I saw Eric Dane's performance in this episode and how it was, Sam Levinson is probably not a guy I want to hang out with. But I think it seems like he did Eric Dane a solid here, and it did kind of move me to watch his performance here. Patrick, you're nodding a little bit. Any reaction to this?
Yeah, I actually think both. We didn't talk too much about it, but in a previous episode, there was a Nate Cal sort of exchange that I thought was like both very funny and interesting. It was, Cal speaking, trying to understand or explain how he views his sexuality, and Nate being like, it was a very funny, like, it was a very good sequence. And it's similar in there. There's always like 9 beer bottles around to help explain why Cal is the way he is, which, lines up with, where we leave his character and where he might be anyway. But I thought that exchange with Jules was wonderful as well. I don't know how much we're going to get of Eric Dane throughout the rest of the season, if these are just a couple of sequences where they're able to weave him in. If we never see him again, I think having a moment with Nate and having a moment with Jules, it felt like he brought closure to the characters he impacted the most over the course of the show. And I don't think it ends in a place where he's forgiven, but it is somebody who seems to be working on themselves, trying to understand why they are the way they are, and watching these two characters bounce off Cal and like where he is and where they are. I thought that, especially in the context of, Eric Dane, the person, I found all that to be very moving, very beautifully handled, and, often like kind of frustrating because like, I just wish the show was more of this. It's clearly capable of it. It just has this interest elsewhere in a frustrating way.
Well, I mean, I think it has its interest in a lot of different things this season. I mean, it feels kind of like, I don't know. There's all these different elements of this. It's the complaints at the beginning of the season that we read, like from reviews, were it just feels like a bunch of disparate parts that don't really come together, and that is still how it feels, right? There's this whole Rue storyline. It's funny, like Rue literally leaves one of the storylines to go into the other storylines. It's like, oh, I got to leave the wedding and go to a completely unrecognizable in terms of aesthetics and also storyline. This other plot to.
There's no way to connect them. Like it's the show just admitting like which is frustrating because like we just had a moment where Rue shows up to Jules's place and we sort of get a sense that they perhaps reconnected in more ways than one, and then like, oh, sorry, I got this thing. It's called a different show. I got to go be on. Like I'll be BRB. Like I know this. Yeah. I know this is Euphoria season 3, but I have this Breaking Bad spinoff that I got to go participate in down the street.
Rue is dispatched to make a pickup at Laurie's, and along the way, she gets a call from Fez and kind of talks with him. And I gotta say, Patrick, I don't know that it was a good job to keep the character of Fez, a good idea to keep the character of Fez alive, because you know what I thought of was what happens with Brian in Fast and Furious, Paul Walker's character, right? For those who don't know, Paul Walker, who played one of the main characters of the Fast and Furious franchise, died tragically towards the end of shooting Furious 7. And they had this amazing, beautiful ending, like goodbye for Brian, where Vin Diesel's car and Paul Walker's car go in separate directions, and it's really lovely. But they kept the character of Brian alive in the universe, and they kept like that would have been great, except they made a fatal mistake. They kept making Fast and the Furious movies, and so they kept Brian's character alive, and so then they would have to like come up with all these excuses for why Brian isn't there. Oh, he's home taking care of the kids. That's why he's not on this adventure. And like someone's got to tell Brian about what's going on, and all this other stuff. And it became very ridiculous over time. I don't think that's going to be a problem in this show because we only have 5 episodes of this series ever left. Mm-hmm. But I think it's just, there's something kind of macabre about it of like, oh, hey, I'm talking to Fez, who's played by the actor who isn't alive anymore. And it's like, we all know he's not alive anymore. And it's like, I feel like, I don't know, characters like that, in my opinion, should be recast, or they should have the character pass away, so it's like they're gone from the universe of the show as well. Patrick, do I protest too much? What do you think?
No, I think this is the show being. I think it's it didn't work for me at all because it doesn't make any. It'd be one thing if it was like, hey Faz, cut away. We're never gonna revisit that conversation. But like obviously, in contrast to Lexi, Rue would keep in touch with Fez, and we're just going. That's how we're going to acknowledge where these characters are and the different ways they would handle one of their friends, being incarcerated. Yeah. But instead, there's just like every other phone call in a
Right.
in a TV show or movie,
show,
we
you
get
hear
to
both
hear
sides,
the
right?
the voice, and so yes, it would have been ghoulish to
Right.
like. I think even to recast it would have been weird. Like so. They didn't choose the worst of all worlds, which is like we fed his voice into an AI and like we spat it out. And I don't know that this one is disrespectful. It's just awkward. It's awkward in a way that I don't think benefits the storytelling. And think of it if you were watching the show. Like I think it's for you and I, it lands even worse because we are aware that the actor portraying that character is dead. I think it is not unreasonable that someone not as tuned in and is just like watches Euphoria maybe is just unaware that that actor passed away. And if you look at Euphoria not as like as just a work, you'd be looking at that conversation and be like, I don't really understand why they shot it this way. This is like a really weird way to do it with this character. And so I don't think it lands in the broader context of like what happened. And I think it does, in some ways it like does the character a disservice because the character can't have a voice. The character has to speak through the lines that are written for Rue as opposed to, so storytelling about Fez is laundered through Rue's lines. And I thought how they addressed it with Lexi was enough. I got the sense that Rue being annoyed that Lexi hadn't called Fez communicates to the audience. Well, Rue does. Of course, Rue would be talking to Fez. We don't need to then see that. We know that Rue would, for all her faults, like cares about the people in her life and would have wanted to check in on Fez. Why bother shooting this awkward sequence in the car? So it's not the highest of offenses, but
it's just confusing why they would do it this way. It's interesting to compare what they did with Gen V season 2, right, where one of the lead actors, Chance Perdomo, passed away in between seasons, and the way they handle it in that show is they had the character do something heroic between seasons and die off screen between seasons. So they talked about it that way, which I think was also not great for awkward storytelling reasons that we discussed when we reviewed Gen V season 2, especially the first few episodes were pretty rough. The difference is that the character of Fez was brutally shot in the end of season 2 of Euphoria. So it would not have been like a stretch that character passed away. So I don't know why they did it this way. Perhaps as we get on in the season, we'll understand. Like Fez will have some important role in the final episodes of the show or something like that. I don't know. I hope not, but that's the only reason I can think of as to why they would continue to have his character still be a presence here. Because the way so far, that doesn't really make any sense. All right. At Laurie's, Alamo has insisted that they start testing the drug, so he sends Bishop to help them do it. The visit seems to go without incident, but on the way back, Rue is pulled over by the DEA. Meanwhile, Bishop poisons Laurie's bird, Paladin, who seemingly dies in the final moments of the episode. Also, it does seem as though Jules returns home and there's someone there, and we know it's not Rue because she's getting pulled over by the DEA at that time. So, some interesting threads for next episode of the show. Any other thoughts on this episode or any of those plot lines, Patrick Klepek?
It doesn't feel like the Jules stuff is going to end in a good place. And like of any of the characters that I was,
why is that? Why do you say that? Why do you think that?
Because I think this person is a serial killer. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're these sort of the way that like that sequence is shot when she is like wrapped in like the saran wrap, like does not seem like it is done. There's a layer of menace to it. I think that the audience is supposed to come away from. Now, maybe that is expectation playing. But we'll see. And I guess it's tough because part of, even if I disagree with the directions the show is taking our various characters, like I disagree with like almost all of them as like interesting things to do with these characters post where they end up in Euphoria season 2. But because they have no reason to overlap, and it feels like we're watching concurrent shows next to each other, I worry everyone except Rue is going to get no chance to breathe, right? Like Rue's storyline will get a chance to, like, it seems like Rue's storyline is like storyline A. Cassie and Nate, we're going to get a lot of time with too.
Yeah.
And then occasionally Jules and Maddie will show up to do something. And then even less occasionally, the camera will pan and Lexi is there. It sort of feels
that is a very good description of this season so far. Yes,
right. Like when she's at the wedding, it's like, oh, she's at the table next to Cassie. Lexi's here. And I like the actor, and I like, again, I've said before.
Whenever Lexi's not on screen, people should be asking, "Where's Lexi?"
I am. I part of I defend some of the audacity of the end of Euphoria season 2 was because I like Lexi the character so much in the show, but I feel like it's so disparate geographically that it seems difficult to imagine the show having the oxygen to provide all its storylines, and I worry that will end up being a truly fatal flaw, even as I try to accept the show for what it is instead of what it isn't. Even on its own terms, I worry you can't juggle the plates if the plates aren't in the same scene together, and it just feels like that's where we're headed with Euphoria season 3. So I remained. Give me a shot like the one with the staircase once an episode. I'm gonna have trouble complaining. But mostly because I'm disappointed, and I think that's kind of where I end up on Euphoria season 3 so far. Is I'm just disappointed. Like there was more here, but we do appear to be on the same kind of decline from season 1 to season 2 to season 3. So maybe it all is predictable in the end.
I mean, I wonder if Euphoria season 3 will give us at least one banger episode, because even in season 2, which I thought was not very good season, there were like a couple episodes that were like really pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
And this episode comes close to that. It like approaches that in terms of the Cassie Nate subplot, but I don't think it quite reaches there because of the totality of the episode. The other thing I'll say about Jules is I'm reminded of something that Sarah Mara said to me while we were viewing Fall of the House of Usher, which is that I think it was Fall of the House of Usher, which is that like a lot of rich people, you often will see depraved sexual things from them because they've essentially achieved, or they've essentially pushed every, or there is no check on their desires, right? Like they can literally have anything they want. And so once you get to, oh, hey, I can have all the food I want, I can have the car I want, then it's like eventually gets to the point where it's like, well, what about these other desires that are less conventional? And maybe you're seeing that, play out with the Jules storyline. And who knows how interesting it'll be. Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.